Okay, we're doing a thing called order of operations. This is something that you've probably done a lot of, at least in Algebra 1, maybe even before Algebra 1. I'm not really sure. What's the first thing? Somebody tell me, what's the first thing? When somebody says order, the guys in the back, on the left, sorry, I don't know everybody's name just yet. Okay, what's your name in the back? Okay, sit up. Okay, nobody's head's on the desk. Just not going to deal with that. All right, everybody's up, eyes up here, paying attention to me. And you should be writing once we start writing this stuff. Okay, you should have something already. What should you have on your notes already? Order of operations, very good. Okay, that should be on your notes. All right, so here we go. What was I saying? Got rudely interrupted. Yeah, what's the one thing that pops in your head when you think of order of operations? There's like one, it's like a word that's not really a word that stands for something. What is it? PEMDAS, right, okay? People pronounce it different ways. So you probably remember this. Almost every single math teacher teaches this. Okay. Now, when I learned it, we never said PEMDAS. It just seems like in the last few years, people have been saying that. But when I learned it for the first time, and when I taught it for many, many years, these letters stand for something just to make it kind of easy for us to remember. Does anybody remember that? It's like a little phrase. What was it, Josh? Very good. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, okay? That's how I remembered it, all right? Or people shortened it to PEMDAS, and that's fine. But they stand for something besides just please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, all right? They stand for something mathematical, don't they? So what does the P stand for? Parentheses. Let's write that down. Parentheses, and then the E, exponents, good. And this is the order that you do things in. That's why they call it the order of operations. The very first thing you look at is if there's any parentheses. You do that first. Then you look to see if there's any exponents. You do that next. Then you look for what? Multiplication. I'll just shorten that. And then you look for division, and then addition, and then let's bring this up a little bit, and then subtraction. Now, let me show you this. This multiplication and division, if you have a list of numbers and you got multiplication and division, you always do those basically at the same time, but you would go from left to right, okay? So if you have multiplication and division, you do those at the same time. You don't necessarily just do the multiplication first, then the division. Everybody hear me on that? You do them from left to right. Same thing with addition and subtraction. If you have a whole bunch of things that are being added and subtracted, right, you don't necessarily just add the stuff together that is being added, then you do the subtraction. You add and subtract from what? Left, talk to me, to right, okay? So make sure that you do that. Left to right, okay? Just put that in there. All right? That's where people get a little bit tricked up. Now, I'm an old guy, and so my social media is basically Facebook, okay? And I look at Facebook from time to time. I don't put a whole lot of stuff on there. But every once in a while, I'll see some people post. They probably do this in Instagram as well. And I'm not sure what other social medias that you would see this. But you ever see people like put a little meme on there as a little math problem and say, you know, what'd you get? And everybody puts what they got. And there's all these different answers. And like, well, how can all these people get all these different answers? What's up with that? Well, it's because they're not performing the what? The order of operations correctly. All right, it looks like they are. And the part that really gets people confused is this. When you have multiplication and division, you always go left to right. And a lot of people don't do that. Addition and subtraction, you go left to right. A lot of people don't do that. So most people understand the parentheses and the exponents part, but it's here and here where a lot of people mess up. Have you seen that on your social media? What do you look at where you would see that? Instagram, would that be on an Instagram feed? Yes? You ever see that? Nobody's seen it? Nobody's talking to me? Yes? Okay, I got a couple nods. All right, that's good enough. All right, so let's do a couple examples. And these examples, I didn't just make up. I'm getting them from the worksheet that I'm going to give you today. So my last class, I think we did 6 of them. So we should be able to do about the same amount today. We got plenty of time, I think. When we get over, this is what, 45? Okay, so I got 25 minutes. Yeah, that should be plenty of time. I'm not going to tell you which number it is on the worksheet. We'll just start off, we'll just call this example 1. Okay? We'll start off pretty easy. Let's do this one. Now, I said this before when we first started these worksheets. When they do multiplication, they put the X on there. We will rarely see using that little X symbol, that little cross symbol for multiplication, except for, actually, they don't do it on this one. They do it on another one. Sorry. So I shouldn't even have said that. That's a plus 7. All right, so here we go. I will give you like 10 seconds. Get an answer. All right, show your work. Show your work. It's not much work. It's a little bit of work. But go ahead and figure out what this is. Thing I'm trying to teach you today is what? Do what first? Parentheses, okay? You do see parentheses, so let's do what's in the parentheses first. So it's 6 plus 7. Anybody know what 6 plus 7 is? 13. Very good. Keep it in parentheses. What's that 3 doing to that 13? It's multiplying. It's timesing. That's right. Okay, when it's right next to it without a sign in between, then that means it's being multiplied. Can you do that in your head? 13 times 3? 39. Good. And then I always want you to circle your answers. All right? Put your equal signs down. Put your answer, circle it, and you're good to go. So when I say show your work, right? If I pass paper, and the other day, Friday, I passed papers back to you. A lot of you guys saw show your work on there, didn't you? Okay, it would be because you didn't show this step. All right, so make sure you show all the steps, even if you can do it in your head. Even if you can look at this and say, oh, that's 13 times 3, 13 times 3 is 39. All right, so even if you can do this in your head, I want to see the work. All right, now if the problem was just 6 plus 7, is there any work to show? No, there's not. There's nothing you can really show. So the only thing you could do is put 13. But if you can show some work, which we did right here, if it's a multi-step problem, right? If it's not just one step, if it's multi-step, then make sure you show your work. Okay, everybody good with that? Let's do one I didn't do in the last class. Let's do this one. We'll call it example 2. It's not number 2 on the worksheet, but we'll call it example 2. That's a division sign right there. Looks a little sloppy. So it's 72 divided by 9 plus 7. I don't like that dot right there. It's going to bug me. There we go. That looks better. So 72 divided by 9 plus 7. Not very hard, not very difficult, but it's a little different than what we did last period. Go ahead and try it. Do it on your own. This is where we test if you know your multiplication tables, right? What's the first thing we're going to do? We got a couple choices. We could go 72 divided by 9, or we could go 9 plus 7, right? Not really. There's only one choice. What's the choice? Do the division. That's right. Do the division before you do any addition, okay? It's really important that you do that. So let's do the division. 72 divided by 9 is 8. Good. And then plus 7, and that equals 15, and you're good to go. Wasn't much work, okay, but at least I see how you got 15. Now, they could have done this. 7 plus 72 divided by 9. Now, that would be a little trickier than what this was. This was pretty straightforward because left to right, you know. But a lot of people would do what incorrectly? What do you think? Yeah, a lot of people would say, oh, let's just go left to right. 7 plus 72. But is that what we do here? No. That's where people could get into some trouble on this, right? You got to make sure that you know you do the division first before you do any addition, okay? It's the same exact thing. That would be what? 7 plus 8, which is 15. There you go. But a lot of people would mess this up. A lot of people would get this one right, but a lot of people would mess this one up. Who said what?
Does that go for multiplication too?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do... that one's kind of the same. All right, let's do this one. This one introduces some more parentheses. Yeah, let's do this. Is this 3? Example 3. So let's go 40 divided by 4 minus 5 minus 3. Again, it's still fairly simple, but we're getting a little bit more advanced as we go on. So go ahead and try that. I want you to try that on your own. Make sure you show your steps. All right, we good? Yeah, it should be plenty of time. What's the first thing we do? Yeah, do the parentheses first, okay? Now, technically, we do the parentheses, we bring everything down, and then what's the next thing after that? The division. So really, if you wanted to combine 2 steps into one, couldn't we kind of do them both at the same time? Yeah, so if you wanted to, you could. But yeah, technically, we do the parentheses first. But then you know you're going to have to do the division, all right? Yes. Well, let's see. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's right. Let's just show the steps. No use to skimp out a little bit. Here we go. So what do we got? 5 minus 2 is, I gave it away. 5 minus 3 is 2. So really, this is just 40. You don't have to write this step if you don't want to. All right, I'll just do it without the parentheses there. Okay? Now, a lot of people might look at this and say, oh, 4 minus 2. Right? But can you do that? No. What do you got to do? That's right. You got to do the division. All right? So 40 divided by 4 is, minus 2 is 8. And there you go. I showed my steps. See all that stuff right there? Put all that stuff down. I mean, it's not that hard, right? You're just bringing stuff down for the most part. But it just keeps everything in order. And then if you get used to doing it on a simple problem like this, when the problems get a lot more complicated, then you're kind of used to that whole thing, showing all your steps. Okay, that's why it's important to show your steps here. Even though you might be able to do it in your head, all right, it's good to be in that practice because the problems aren't always going to be this easy. All right, let me see what else we got. All right, let's do this one. Call this, I'll put it up here. Example 4.
Montgomery to the office for dismissal. Thank you.
All right, so 7 plus 10 times 5 plus 10. There you go. Give you about 15 seconds. Work on that. Anybody get an answer? Anybody want to tell me what your answer was? What'd you get? 67. That's a weird answer. Anybody else? No, you're right. I was just fooling. It is 67. Let's see why it is. Here we go. Everybody watching? It looks like at first, if we weren't talking about it all class period, it looks like at first you go 7 plus 10, doesn't it? Okay, but is that what we do? No. You look to see if there's any multiplication, and there is. There's this one right here. Okay, so we have to do that first. So I'm going to put 7 plus, what's that? 50 plus 10. And now we just add them up. 50 and 10 is 60, and 60 and 7 is 67. Okay? And you're like, Mr. Hamrick, you didn't show your work on that step to this step, but I already showed work from here to here, so I'm good. Yeah, these are pretty simple, aren't they? Of course, I get accused all the time of always saying stuff simple, and sometimes it's not. But I think I'm right on this, don't you? Yeah. All right. Let's try a couple more. What's that? 4? How many did I say we're going to do? 6 of them? So let's do this one. Let's do example 5. Now this one looks a little bit different than the rest that we've been doing so far, but it's the same idea. Now here's one thing that we didn't talk about. It's not really in the PEMDAS thing, but I'll tell you right now. If you have now what if you had a bunch of stuff you had to do on top? I always do the top and then the bottom separately. So if you have one big old fraction like this, always figure out what the top is, then figure out what the bottom is, and then you can go ahead and see if they will divide. Everybody got that? Okay? So make sure you do that. So what about the top? Do I have to do anything to the top? No, it's already simplified, so I'm just going to put 45. Now what I'm going to do is work the bottom. So let's do that. And we'll show a couple steps here. So we do the parentheses first. Again, you might be able to do this in your head, but I'm showing all the steps. 5 minus 4 is 1, and then minus 3. There's 45 over. Do the multiplication first. 8 times 1 is 8 minus 3. All right? Now you're seeing it, aren't you? 8 minus 3 is 5. 45 divided by 5 is 9. 9 times 5 is 45. Make sure you know your multiplication tables. Because on the quiz on Monday, you're not going to be able to use what? Your calculator. So make sure you know how to do that division without a calculator. Yes?
So you did subtraction before you divided how?
Because I did the parentheses first. Okay, and it's a good question. Yeah, you're right. I did parentheses before I multiplied. But it's because of the parentheses. There's like a hierarchy, right? Parentheses is the most important. You do that first, and then you go in order. You do parentheses, then you can do any multiplication and division, then you can do any addition and subtraction. But even if it's addition and subtraction inside the parentheses, you do that in the parentheses, okay? Everybody good with that? Yeah. 5 minus 1? Why? No, you can't do that. You can't go this 8 minus 3, because what is that 8 doing to that parentheses? It's being multiplied. So you have to do multiplication before you do subtraction. So you cannot go 8 minus 3. All right? I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a good point. Okay, make sure you go in order. What's the order? Parentheses. So we do that. Even though it's a subtraction inside the parentheses, we still do the parentheses. Then what do? We don't go 8 minus 3. We got to do multiplication, because that comes next. All right, so we do the multiplication right here. Then we can finally do the subtraction. So we get this answer 8, then we can do the subtraction. And all I did with that thing on the top was just let it ride all the way down, okay? And now I can go ahead and do this. Now, if you had a problem, I don't think they do this. No, they don't do this on the worksheet. But what if you had something that looked like this on top, right? You do the top, right? So you figure out what you get on the top, and then you figure out what you get on the bottom, and then you divide at the very end. Okay? So that's a situation where division is the last thing that you do. That's what we did here too, isn't it? This division was the very last thing we did. Why? Because it was part of a big old fraction. All right? So we do the top, we do the bottom, and then we go do the division at the very end. So that kind of flies in the face a little bit of our PEMDAS thing, but that's another rule that we learned today. What's that, 5? How many did I say we're doing? 6? Let's do one more just for fun. I think we're good now, don't you? Yeah, I don't think they get a whole lot more complicated. Let's do one more. And then they put an X right here. All right. So it's a little bit more complicated. So if you can do this one, you can do any of them. Now, they don't have any exponents on here at all, do they? That worksheet didn't put any exponents on there. But there will, I don't know about in geometry. If you have to do order of operations with exponents, I'm trying to think. I kind of doubt it. Algebra 2, absolutely. Okay, Algebra 2, you're going to do a ton of exponents. So again, just follow the rules, follow the order. It's got to be done in a certain order. What's the first thing you're going to simplify on this? The parentheses, right. Even though it's an addition, we still do that first, okay? Because addition's like at the end, isn't it? But it's in parentheses, so that's more important than anything. So we do that first. Now, what are we going to get for that? A 9. And then we'll do this, but let's just do this in the same order, okay? So what's that going to be? 8 divided by what? Huh? 4, okay. And then times, what's that going to be? 9 times what? Okay, let's do the 8. Let's simplify the fraction before we do anything else. That makes it a little bit easier. So what's 8 divided by 4? 2. So it's 2 times 9 times 3. All right? And I don't know, what's the easiest way to do it? 2 times 3? Because it doesn't matter what order you multiply it. 2 times 3 is what? 6. What's 9 times 6? Do you know that? 9 times 6? 54. Very good. It's 54. That's probably the easier one, because 18 times 3, I kind of doubt you know 18 times 3. 2 times 27, I kind of doubt you know 2 times 27. But you do know 6 times 9, right? That's one of our multiplication tables. That's why I did it that way. But it is true that 18 times 3 is what? 54. Okay, 2 times 27, what's that? That's 54. So it doesn't matter what order you multiply them in, you'll still get 54. Any questions on that? We good? Anything else before I shut this down? Okay. All right, I'm going to give you a worksheet. You've got about 12 minutes, okay? That's a lot of time. So show me that you can handle. The other class only had 5 minutes left, and they started working right away, all right? So you do the same. As soon as I hand the worksheet out to you, start working on it. Get as many done as you can. Finish it for homework, and this will be due tomorrow.